Jessica Edens was a woman who shot and killed her 2 children, her estranged husband's co-worker, and herself in a murder-suicide in South Carolina in 2017. Jessica had been separated from her husband Benjamin for 6 months, and they were discussing divorce. Jessica accused her husband of having an affair with Meredith Rama, a woman he worked with and coincidentally lived in the same apartment complex. She claimed that Benjamin was abusive to their daughter and wanted to take her away. Just a few days before the shooting, the custody dispute escalated in the courtroom, and Jessica was reported to have become upset and emotional. It was then when she formed a plan to get her revenge. Jessica went to her parents' home and stole a .40 caliber handgun on July 12, 2017. On July 13, 2017, Jessica drove to the Greenville apartment complex and shot Meredith Rama once in the head while her children were in the car. She then drove out to the Greenville-Pickens Speedway. She shot her 2 children and finally turned the gun on herself. Jessica left behind 3 suicide notes that expressed her pain, anger, and guilt. She left one for her parents, one for the father of her son, and one for her estranged husband Benjamin. In the note left for Benjamin, her motives were revealed. She wanted him to experience everlasting consequences for having an affair. Benjamin moved to Alabama in an attempt to move on and cope with the trauma of losing his entire family in one day. He is an advocate for mental health, a software developer, and enjoys fishing and hunting. Benjamin has been reported to have said he still loves his wife and has forgiven her for what she did. Marie Noe was a woman from Pennsylvania and lived in the Kensington area with her husband, Arthur. Between the years of 1948 and 1968, Marie gave birth to 10 children. None of those children made it to 2 years of age. After the birth of her 10th child, she suffered a uterine rupture, causing her to need an emergency hysterectomy. The 10 children's death certificates listed the cause of death as acute pulmonary edema, congenital atelectasis, acute bronchopneumonia suffocation, and sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS. Even after the death of 10 children, investigators just saw the situation as unusual and said there was no evidence of foul play. Marie and Arthur were the most bereaved parents in America. It was later found that the causes of death were false. 8 of the 10 children died at the hands of their own mother. Interest was renewed in the case in 1998 when Stephen Fried wrote an article for Philadelphia magazine called Cradle to Grave about another filicide case. He brought new information to the police. At the age of 71, Marie was taken in for questioning by police and confessed to suffocating 8 of her children. Her motives were unclear, but she gave various reasons for her actions. She claimed that she was transfused as a child with the prisoner's blood, that she was a blood cousin of her husband, or that she was a wicked person. She also said she was irritated by the children and could not cope with motherhood. The DA announced charges days later. Marie pleaded guilty. Her plea agreement was controversial, as Marie did not serve a day in prison. She was sentenced to 20 years probation with the first 5 years under house arrest. A condition of her plea agreement was participating in a psychiatric study in hopes to find the motive behind her killings. Marie's case made national news. The New York Times, Washington Post, and all the morning shows covered the story. Marie lived out the rest of her life in the home she killed her children in. Many experts suggested that she suffered from a mental disorder. However, she never underwent a psychiatric examination as part of her sentence. She died at the age of 87 in 2016. In early summer of 2001, the nation was appalled by the news of the murder of 5 young children at the hands of their very own mother. Andrea Yates suffered from severe postpartum depression and psychosis. She suffered through these conditions through the birth of her first 4 children. She had been hospitalized on several occasions for suicide attempts and psychotic episodes. Andrea's 5th child was conceived against medical advice. She stopped taking her medication prior to giving birth, and her mental state deteriorated further after the child's birth. During a psychotic episode, Andrea drowned her children, aged 7, 5, 3, 2, and 6 months in the bathtub in their Texas home. Andrea believed that Satan told her to kill her children to save them from hell. Andrea then called the police. She calmly requested them to come to her home because she was ill. When they arrived, she showed them 4 children placed in bed covered in a sheet. The youngest was left floating in a tub. She was charged with capital murder for the deaths of 3 of the 5 children, Noah, John, and Mary. She was not charged for the deaths of Luke and Paul. Prosecutors probably wanted to keep their options open, in case they did not get a guilty verdict or the death penalty in the first trial. Indictment for other murders could be pursued at a later timer. This legal tactic of charging only some murders in a multiple homicide case is called selective prosecution. Andrea pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. The jury rejected her insanity defense, and she was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison in 2002 with the possibility of parole in 40 years. The trial was highly publicized. Andrea was portrayed as a monster, a cold-blooded killer. The prosecution argued that Andrea knew right from wrong. She killed her children to get out of the stress of raising them. They presented false testimony from a psychiatrist that claimed she was influenced by a TV show. In 2005, it was revealed that the psychiatrist's testimony was false. Andrea's conviction was reversed and she was granted a new trial. In 2006, she was found not guilty by reason of insanity. She was committed to a state mental hospital. She has the option to seek release each year but has never attempted to do so. She reportedly mourns her children every day and spends her time making crafts and watching old home videos. The trial of Andrea Yates was a catalyst in bringing mental health awareness to the dinner table. Advocates came forward pointing to the cracks in the system that allowed such a tragedy to take place. 1 in 7 mothers experience some symptoms of postpartum depression. Postpartum symptoms include, but are not limited to, feeling sad, hopeless, or worthless, losing interest or pleasure in activities you used to enjoy, having trouble sleeping, eating, or concentrating, feeling anxious, irritable, or angry, having thoughts of harming yourself or your baby, having difficulty bonding with your baby. You can call 1-800-662-HELP.